Hey there, this is Michael with growthhop.com, and I'm going to be showing you in this video how to use the COUNTIF formula in Google Sheets, or you could call it the COUNTIF function. So I have a pretty simple tutorial set up for this. We've got a few different examples starting from really simple to a little bit more complex. And in today's example, I'm going to be using some pipeline data from a sales team where we have a few different salesmen and different activities that they're doing on different days. And I want to basically count and summarize that data in these different tables in different views. So starting with the first example, a really simple way to use the COUNTIF formula would be to have a few different salesmen and just the number of activities that they did overall in a given time period. So to get started, I'm going to hit the equals sign and I'm going to start typing in COUNTIFs and put in my open parentheses rather. Now the first thing I need to do is define the criteria range for, let's start with Tom, for example. So I'm going to grab or put my cell selected in this cell right at the top of the data table here. And you could basically hold shift and scroll down, or you could hold shift and command at the same time if you're on a Mac and hit the down arrow and that would jump to the bottom, or you could jump to the bottom of the entire spreadsheet. But I'll give you a pro tip here. Having worked with Google Sheets for many years, the best way that I found to basically use any COUNTIF formula or SUMIF formula is to not go those two routes, but do the third option, which is you're going to use a colon and then you'll type in H. So that means that it's going to go to the bottom of H, the column H, no matter what. So if you have 1,000 rows, then it'll go to 1,000. If you have 10,000 rows, it'll go down to the 10,000 row. It doesn't matter how much data you put in your spreadsheet tab, it's going to go all the way to the bottom. The next thing I want to do is lock the range that I'm selecting. So if you hold the function key and hit F4, you'll see these little dollar signs next to the column and row numbers. So that basically just locks it, and I'll show you what that means in a second here, but that'll lock your range. If you do comma, now I'm just going to move over to Tom, and I'm going to do the function F4 again, and then I'm going to hit it again and again, so that way I'm locking the B column. Now if I start over and I do it once, it'll lock it to this cell, so wherever I drag the formula, it'll only be stuck on Tom. And I'll just show you that as an example real quick. If I just close the parenthesis and I drag this down and I double click, you can see that it's locked to Tom. Okay, but if I go back in here into the formula and I do the function F4, if I do it like this, it's still going to be locked to Tom, but if I do it like, if you see, if I do it like this and drag this way, I'm going to get some zeros because where I was selecting in B5 before, it's going to be dragging over at the row level. So in this case, since I'm going to be dragging down, what I need to do is go back in here and then hit that function one more time, function F4, and lock it on the column. So that way when I drag it down, it goes to the next person. So you'll see I'm going to drag it down, and now it's on Kevin, and I'll drag it down again, and it's on Kyle. Or you can also just copy and paste, and it'll do the same thing. So that's the first example, very simple. All I'm doing is counting the number of activities for each salesman. So let's move down and get a little bit more complex, and let's count based on two different parameters. So in this case, we will count the activities by salesman like we did before, but we're also going to add one more parameter, which is the activity type. So there's cold calling, there's emailing, you can send a contract, you can close a contract, and so forth. So I'm just going to copy my cell, paste it in here, and it's on Tom, but now I need to add that second rule or criteria. So I'm going to go into the formula, I'm going to do comma, and I'm going to select my second criteria range. And like I told you before, I'm going to do colon, and then I'm going to do the letter of the column. So it drops all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to do comma, and this time's different. So before we just went over, now we're going to go up because the activity type is stored up here. So if I do function F4 and do the column, if I drag it down, or move it this way, it's going to be stuck on this cell. So instead of that, I need to not lock it to that one cell, but I need to lock it to the row. And that way, when I drag my formulas across, it will update properly. So we can see in this case, Tom has performed 15 cold calls. Kevin performed 12, and Kyle performed 11. And then if I copy these and drag them over and paste them, we can now see, for example, that Kevin has performed 4 contract sends in this amount of time. So pretty straightforward with 2 parameters. Now I'm going to do basically a bonus example and get even more complex, which is a very common COUNTIF scenario that people catch themselves in, which is when you're trying to have the parameter add another criteria range or another parameter between 2 dates. So I'm going to copy my cell or my formula, drop it in here, and you can see that it's locked up here. If I want to fix that, I can. I could just go right into here. Instead of putting row 11, I'll put row 18. So that way I'm just keeping my formulas clean in the same area. But the thing is you notice in this data table over here, there's a date for each activity that was performed. And I have right here 2 date pickers. In Google Sheets, if you put a date in and you double click, you have this little nice calendar user interface. So you could select the range that you want to basically find out how these salesmen performed or what they did in that time period. So how I do this is a little bit different because I want to select in between 2 dates. So let's say, for example, this data goes through March, but I only want to see Tom's activity for cold calls within the month of January. So I'm going to double click back into my formula. I'm going to do a comma, and I need to go to my 3rd criteria range. I'm going to go to column J. I'm going to do my colon J, hit my function F4, lock it to that range, comma. Now, since I want it to be in between 2 dates, the first date, the start date, is where I need to start, obviously. So what I'm going to do is a parentheses, or not parentheses, quotations. I'm going to do greater than sign, equal sign, quotations, which is just saying greater than, the date is greater than or equal to, and I need to do and, so I can reference the start date, and I'm going to lock it to that cell completely. So if I stopped right here, it would give me all of Tom's cold calls that is greater than or equal to this date. And you could stop it there if you just wanted to have a start date. But in this case, I want to do in between 2 dates. So I'm going to do a comma again, and I'm going to add my 4th criteria range, which is just the same column, J again. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to go here. And this time, since I'm putting an end date, I need to do less than or equal to's with an and. And I'm going to go to the end date. I'm going to lock it. And then voila. So you can see this is the number of cold calls Tom performed in this time period. And I could copy this paste it. It's going to be the same thing. So we could do, let's say, the month of February. You'll see these formulas, or these values start to change. And you can see the performance. So those are 3 examples of COUNTIFs. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, contact me, and I would be happy to look at your example and help you write the formula that you need.